Hi everybody, my name is Crystal and I am coming to you from my studio, Glass Emotions in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. It's a rather beautiful day out there today, but I'm in here trying to do this video for you so you can get some information on working with Rogue enamels. I hope you enjoy this video. I will put a couple disclaimers. I'm not a professional videographer, and this is all kind of mashed together with a webcam and various technical stuff. But I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you learn something and have some fun. And I hope you continue to experiment with all enamels. And hopefully Rogue will be on your list to try. Thanks. Before I get started, I actually do want to put some credits. Of course, I didn't dream all this up myself, and I am by far not the inventor of doing pours or painting in any way. I watch a lot of YouTube videos, and pours has become very popular in both acrylic painting as well as now in the fused glass world. So I peruse a lot of videos, and this one, Dropping Paint by Diane, and the link is there, is a very interesting way, and it kind of intrigued me, and I wanted to see if I could replicate it in glass using the Rogue enamels. I'd also like to thank Paul Tarlow, who continues. I use this firing schedule calculator just about in everything I do. It helps me to estimate the amount of time that it will take to fire something. Anyway, invaluable tool. Lois Mano, of course, who's become a great friend, who taught me all about modeling glass, which is another video that I think I might do on how to color modeling glass with Rogue. But Lois actually had the tip about using this silicone baking mat in your kiln, which I think is wonderful. If you have an opportunity to take one of Lois' classes, I highly recommend it. It is a lot of fun, and Lois is a great teacher. And of course, last but certainly not least to me is Marguerite Bieneke from South Africa. She has been an inspiration to me for many years in her painting and her creations and her artwork. We've also become good friends. It was Marguerite who introduced me to these enamels, and I think she is just an absolutely amazing artist who is coming back here in 2020 to do, believe it or not, 3 session workshops, one in the spring and one in the fall. So if you aren't already on the list, I hope you'll check it out. All right, so let's get started. I think the first thing to go through will be the things I have in front of me, which is a supply list. So I'm actually going to turn the video off my face and onto my workstation. Just gotta put this down. There we go. So just to go through, I have the Rogue water-based medium. I have the Rogue enamels, and for today I'm going to be using a palette of Poppy Red, Vivid Turquoise, Sun Yellow, Cobalt Blue, White, of course you'll use a lot of that, and Harvest Brown. The other things that you're going to want to have in order to do this, of course you can wing it always, but I do prefer using a digital scale. So this is one I got on Amazon. It has the ability to measure grams to multiple decimal points, grams, ounces, milliliters, and some other measurements, which I don't use. I also have a measuring spoon, because you can also just use measuring spoons to do your mix, 1-to-1, 4-to-1, various mixtures that we use in the enamels. And you guys can count how many times I say or a, and let me know. The other thing I have is just some plain tap water. I have some empty jars, which I'm going to mix the pouring mix in and the enamel in. I have a syringe, which I use to draw the pouring mixture up into the enamels. I have here a small Perrier bottle, which I've cut the bottom off, and this was actually one of my inspirations for this tutorial today. I hope you enjoy it. So I'm actually going to move the bottle out of the way here. I have paintbrushes, of course, rubber gloves, a silicone baking mat, and again, I'd like to give credit to Lois Mano for teaching me this trick. It is oven safe or kiln safe up to 250 degrees Fahrenheit, and when you're drawing various components, especially when you're doing pours or other painting techniques where you want the enamels to dry quicker, you can throw this in the kiln, which is currently heating up right now, to 250, and it keeps your kiln shelf from getting paint all over it. Very handy tool. Thanks, Lois. What else do I have here? Oh, I have a spatula, which you're going to see me use in the pour. I have some popsicle sticks. I have an oven tray, which basically just catches my enamel runoff and keeps my workstation clean. I have some small cups that I use to actually elevate the glass on the baking sheet when I'm doing the pour. And as well, I'll have a 5x5 piece of transparent clear. I'm using Oceanside 96 for this pour. And I think that's about it that's on my workstation here. So we'll move on next to mixing our pouring mixture, medium. So moving on to actually creating the pouring mixture. It's a bit different than if you were just mixing for paints, because you want a more fluid consistency to the enamels to allow it to flow on the glass. So I'm going to start by turning my scale on. I'm going to put it in a large cup. I'm actually going to make a large amount because I do use this mixture quite a bit. I'm going to tar out, which is just a term on the scale, to get a zero balance on there. And the first thing I'm going to add is the actual pure medium, which is the 60163 water-based medium from Rogue. I am going to put a full ounce in here. So you could use any amount depending on how much you want to use. But it will always be a 4-to-1 measurement, with the 1 being the pure medium and the 4 being water. So if you just hang on a sec here, I'm almost up to 1 ounce of the medium. And I'm using a pouring bottle because as it gets closer to the amount that I want, I can slow down the flow and control it a bit better than if I was just pouring it out of a bottle. So I'm almost there. So I actually have 1 ounce of oil or water-based medium in my jar. I'm now going to use my syringe, and again, more because I want to have control of the water as I'm mixing it into this cup. So I'm just going to draw some water into this syringe here. I'm going to tar out my scale again, so I have a 0, and now I'm going to add 4 ounces of water into that medium mixture. You'll see that the contents in the jar are getting almost a milky like color, which is what it's supposed to do, so don't worry or be concerned about that. So I'm just going to finish getting this up to 4 ounces. Believe it or not, it takes almost the full jar because this is a 4-ounce jar. getting close now. I'm just going to sort of slow down. There. So I now have added 4 ounces of water to my medium, and I'm just going to use a paintbrush. I'm going to take it off the scale, turn my scale off, and I'm just going to kind of stir this up. And when you're using this, or if you're mixing a large quantity and you put it away and you come back a couple of days later or whatever it is, you'll want to give it another little stir and just make sure it's all reconstituted back together. And that's pretty much now our pouring mixture, which we're going to mix with the enamels to make. There we go. All right. So now we have our medium mixed, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you 2 different methods for making a pouring mixture. One the traditional method, and one that I've adapted to do a little different technique that I'm going to show you in today's video. So I take a cup, I'm going to put it on my scale and ensure that I have a 0 on my scale, and I am going to first add the enamel. And the enamel can be mixed using the weighing scale or a teaspoon. It's going to be a 4-to-1 relationship, so for 1 part enamel and 4 parts of the pouring mixture. So I'm just going to get started here, and I prefer to use the scale because I can be more accurate. It's kind of like baking, where the mixture is really quite important in terms of the ratios that we're providing to you in this video. So I'm just trying to get exactly 8 grams of enamel, and 8 grams of enamel with the pouring mixture will cover about 4 by 4 squares quite easily. So I now have 8 grams of this beautiful poppy red in my jar, and now I'm going to take my medium pouring mixture, which has sat for a bit, so I'm actually going to give it a little bit of a stir to ensure that it's all together. You don't need a lot, but now I'm going to take my syringe and draw up basically enough that I can get 4 parts medium to 1 part enamel. So I have 8 grams, which means I need 32 grams of the enamel. Sorry, the medium. It's early morning here yet. So now I have 8 grams of the pouring mixture added to my enamel, and I'm going to now stir it up. And what I want you to see is the consistency of when this is mixed together. And you want to give it a good stir because you want the enamels to fully dissolve into that pouring mixture and be free of lumps as much as possible. And you'll notice too, I don't know if you can see, but there's some bubbles in here. So I do let it sit for a couple minutes just to get the bubbles out of the mixture, which you don't want when you're pouring. And I'm just going to demonstrate what this looks like in terms of consistency. And to just put that down, I'm going to grab a popsicle stick just to show you the coverage on a popsicle stick. So as you can see, it's very well covered on the popsicle stick, and it's got a very drip, drip, drip. So it should flow easily off the popsicle stick, which it's doing. So I'm going to put that down. So that's for doing like a regular ribbon type pour, which we're used to and seeing in some of the other works on Facebook. Alright, so now I'm going to do the second mixture, which will be very similar in consistency to the first one that I showed you, but it's going to be a little thicker and not quite so runny. So again, I'm going to make sure that I have the same amount of enamels. So again, I'm going to take 8 grams of this red, poppy red. So I have 8 grams now, and what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take 4 grams of just the pure pouring mixture and add it to the paints. And I'm using a different bottle with a tip, a squeeze bottle, so I can get better control over the amount of medium that I add to the enamels. I'm going to keep my scale here because I am going to add some of the pouring mixture. So basically what I want in this is more of a paint-like consistency, so 2 parts enamel to 1 part medium, which is what you would use if you were painting on the glass. This texture is like a thick honey. You can see how it's kind of pouring off in a ribbon off the paintbrush. I'm thinking maybe I should have made a drinking game. So every time I say or a, you need to take a shot. Of course, you might be thoroughly loaded by the end of this video. Anyway, so that looks good. It's all mixed together very nicely. And now what I'm going to do is put it back on my scale. Get a lot of the paint off. And I'm going to add 4 grams of the pouring mixture to this. Again, I'm going to use my syringe to give me better control over how much I'm adding. So I'm going to add, like I said, 4 grams. So I have a total of 8 grams of the medium. And again, I'm going to give it a stir. Now, just for comparison to the first mixture that I showed you, I'm just gonna, you can see that it's a little thicker, and it is really just running off my stick, very nice, and as compared to this one, which is a bit more fluid. Alright, so while I set up and mix the rest of the enamels, going to mix up 4 more colors for you so that you can see how I actually do the techniques. Alright, so I've got all my enamels mixed, and what I'm going to show you first is a standard pour, which is the 4-to-1 ratio, so 1 part enamel, 4 parts of the pouring mixture. The enamels I have mixed today are Pure White, Poppy Red, Harvest Brown, and Sun Yellow. So, and I have a piece of clear 96 glass, which I've cleaned, and I've raised on a little cup so that I can actually get my hands underneath it to do the pour. So these enamels have been sitting for a couple minutes, so you always want to give a stir to reconstitute all the enamels back into the medium, because the enamels are heavier, of course, than water, and they do settle. So I'm just going to give these all a little stir here with my popsicle stick, and then we'll get started. So another reason why you might want to use the scale, the digital scale, is all the enamels actually have a different volume weight. So 1 teaspoon of one color may weigh more than a teaspoon of another color because some of them are heavier and denser. Alright, so I'm first going to throw on some gloves here because it's about to get really messy, and then we'll see how it goes. So there. So I should probably have put these on before I started filming, but that's okay. So the other thing I like to do, because these cups aren't as easy to pour out of as a smaller container, I actually have these small cups. They're condiment cups from a restaurant that I buy in bulk. So I'm going to pour a bit of this white, each of the colors, into these little cups so that you can get an idea of the control that I can get. Again, making sure that I'm getting all the enamel and it's mixed together. And I wanted to use really bright colors for this so that you can get a good example of how the Rogue enamels pour. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lift my glass and I'm going to pour a ribbon of the white, just so I have some on my palette here. My piece of glass is my palette, and now I'm going to pour some red in there and some nice bright yellow. And you can see they're already starting to flow and mix together, which is really what you want. That's part of the fun of doing this technique. So now I'm just going to kind of move the enamels, and you can see how quickly they flow. Again, why I have the oven tray underneath me, because it can get very messy. So what I want to do though is I make sure I have a very even amount of enamels on the surface of the glass, and I'm just gonna tilt it in various directions so you can see. And I'm actually going to let a lot of this run off, because one of the things with enamels is getting the right amount of enamel on the glass for it to produce a nice glossy surface with no crawling and I'll show you an example of that at the end of this video. But as you can see, I think I'll add a bit more yellow in there just to kind of brighten it up a bit. Maybe a bit more red. So, and again, I'm just swirling the enamels to allow them to create some cool patterns and ribbons. So I'm just going to kind of tilt it up. And you can see I'm allowing a lot of the enamel to run off into my tray here so that I can get a nice even coverage. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to throw this in the kiln at 250 and let it dry so that I can wash the bottom, which you see is very dirty, and the sides. All right, everyone. So what I've done is I've poured the second mixture I showed you, where I used the pure medium and then added the pour mixture to it to produce a little thicker consistency. What I'm going to do, and this is the technique that I saw using acrylics on YouTube, is I'm going to take that little bottom of my pop bottle, my Perrier bottle, and I'm going to start adding the enamels to this, and you'll see how it flows. But because I like working with music on, I'm going to throw some music on, and Alexa is going to help me out here. Alexa, play folk music.
Got it. Here's a station for you. Mellow Folk on Amazon Music.
So again, I want to make sure I'm not leaving too thick an application of enamels on this. And I'm just tilting it a bit so you can see that it's still flowing. I'm just going to try and get it to move to the edges. So what I'm going to do at this point now is something I learned with the technique when I was trying it. So this is actually a piece of Mylar stencil, and I'm just going to lay this onto my enamel. Let all the bubbles run out. And then what I'm going to do is just kind of push so I can get right to the edges of my piece of glass here. And now I am going to lift from one direction to the other and pull up, just like that. So you can see what an amazing design that actually produced just by the spreading of the enamel itself. I'm not going to worry too much. I'm just going to kind of let it flow a little bit more. But it's a neat color combination. And again, I'm trying to let as much of the excess enamel drop off. And that's pretty neat. So I think what I'm going to do is just let that go into the kiln now to dry, and I want to show you another little trick. So what I'm going to do now is, you remember that piece of Mylar? It actually has quite a neat design on it and a lot of enamel still on it. So what I'm going to do is put another piece of clear glass on here, and I'm going to flip this so I can get it right on top of my glass. And again, just let it sit on it, and I'm going to actually pull it from the other direction. No reason, just because. And I'm going to pull up, and you can see how cool is that. So hi again. So I wanted to, while those pieces are drying in the kiln, I wanted to show you some things that you can do. I enjoy making flows just from their beauty, as well as using them as part pieces within Marguerite's abstracts technique, which again, you have to attend that workshop in person to actually get the full spectrum of what you can do with these pieces of glass. I only play with things, and I'm not nearly as skilled as a lot of people out there in doing these, but I did want to show you. So if you remember the other day, what I posted on Facebook, there were two pieces. What I actually did was with that one of the pieces, I cut into strips, and I put into, I bordered it with some transparent blue. I think it's a Riviera blue. This is 96 glass, and I actually used my mica paint mixture to accent the edge of this. What's interesting too is the back side of these pours are almost as interesting as the front side, because of course when you're layering the paint, it doesn't all come through on the top, but whatever is layered on the bottom shows. So again, interesting example. From that same piece, I cut a small piece, which I don't know if you can see. I've got, I actually did a stencil with clear 96 powder that I mixed with mica, mica and the clear enamel to it to give it some texture. This does not rub off, and it has it's hard to see on here, but it has a neat sheen. Also with that piece that I did the other day, I cut it up into many pieces, and I kind of changed the direction of pieces so it didn't look like it came from the same piece, but you can see how beautiful it turned out. These were actually capped, so both this one and this piece I brought to a full fuse after I capped it with another piece of clear. This was an interesting piece, because when I did this pour, I had a lot of paint left on, and I used a Mylar stencil actually to do this pour, and there was a lot of paint left on the Mylar stencil, so I just took it and put it face down on a piece of white 96 glass, and the colors come out more muted, but it has a neat effect. Just something you can do. These two were examples that I had done yesterday. They're kind of examples of when you can go crazy with the amount of color that you use. I just kept layering and layering and layering, and didn't quite get the look I was going for, but it still does have interesting areas within here that I could play around with, and perhaps use a viewfinder to kind of find an area that might make a neat pendant, or this is an old jeweler's trick that it makes it a neat visual, and you can kind of go both directions and see what's happening. Same thing with this one, although this one, and it's difficult to see, but I do have, I'm trying to see if you can, I don't know if that's going to refocus, but there is mica in this piece, and it does, if as you move the glass, you do see the shimmer of the mica coming through. And again, I could cut this into pieces to make into jewelry, or use as part pieces in another composition, an abstract or something like that. So while I wait for the two tiles, I did two, to dry in the kiln, I'll be right back. Hey there, so I'm back and the tiles have come out of the kiln. They're dry and I have washed them off. So I think you remember this one. So this was using the 4 parts pour mixture with 1 part enamel, and you can see that it's a little muted right now because the enamels are dry. It does brighten up when you fire and it'll get that nice glossy surface, but I did want to show you the difference between when it's wet and when it's dry. This was the one that I did use the Mylar stencil on, and I got the interesting effect there. This one was where I took the Mylar stencil and I actually pressed it onto another piece of glass, and there was enough enamel left on that stencil to coat, well, except for some edges, a second piece of glass with a different design altogether. This piece I'm a little concerned with, and I'll tell you why. It looks like the enamels may be too thick, and I'm going to fire it anyway. It was using the same process as these other two, but I somehow got quite a bit of enamel on there. So I am going to fire it, and then I'll show you later through the magic of editing the number of hours that I have to wait now before these come out of the kiln. Hi everyone. So after a rather anxious day of waiting for the kiln to fire and cool down with the pours that I did earlier, I am over the top thrilled with the results that came out of the kiln. This is one of the cool things about Rogue, is the vibrant colors that can be achieved when you're doing these pours or painting or modeling glass or silk screen or airbrushing. It just constantly amazes me, the colors that are coming out of the kiln as a result of using this product. So first off, what I want to do is show you, so this was the ribbon pour that I did using the 1 part enamel to 4 parts medium mixture that I did, and you can see I used quite a bit of red and yellow and the harvest brown in here. Probably if I'm looking at this, I would have liked to have used more of the red, but this is a very smooth, glossy finish, and very typical of the results when using that mixture. What I'm just thrilled with is this was the pour where I used the I made the mixture of a paint using 1 part enamel to basically half that amount of medium, and then adding the pouring mixture to it. What's important to note in this piece is the volume of enamels that went onto this 5x5 piece of glass was way too much, and you would expect that some crawling would happen or some splitting of the enamels when it fired. However, with the application of using the Mylar stencil, which actually lifted off a good amount of that enamel, you can see here that the colors are just gorgeous. And it's again hard to notice, but if you were here in person, there are areas of this where, and I did use the clear enamel mixed with mica, There are some bronze components in here which are turning up, and they're just so shiny and vibrant. I'm really pleased with that. From that piece, you remember I turned the Mylar sheet over that had the extra enamel on it and pressed it onto another piece of glass. You can still see the colors that I used, however it's almost a different set, because as it lifted the enamels off of the first piece of glass, this one, it actually changed the color scheme a bit. And in this one you can actually see more indication of the mica in this, wherever you see the bronze coloring here, here, and here. Anyway, it's kind of all over the piece. What you don't see here is any crawling, and I'm going to show you an example of that because it can happen, and there's a lot of reasons it can happen, and sometimes it produces an interesting result, but I'm going to go through that with you. The final piece I did, it's a bit darker, but you can see the reds in this are very vibrant. I don't know, the coloring on the screen is not showing it as a green, but there is definitely a lot of green in this piece, as well as a lot of the copper mica, or bronze mica I should say. So I'm really thrilled with the results of this, and I hope you will be too. But again, I wanted to show you and give you an example of a piece that was fired earlier. And I just want to show you in this photo, in this picture that you see here, these areas here and over here, this is what we call an example of crawling, or this is generally caused by having too much enamel on the glass. And so it breaks apart and almost pulls in on itself, causing that crawling. Now, it is an interesting effect. However, replicating it every time is difficult to do. Similarly, I did this piece, which has a lot of mica in it, and the colors are certainly beautiful, but it also has a lot of crawling. What I didn't do on these two pieces, as compared to these two pieces, is using the Mylar, which lifted off a good amount of the enamel. So both of these pieces had way too much enamel on them, and thus caused these crawling aspects that you see here. Again, interesting effect, and you know, playing around with enamels and what they do and how you want them to work for you in your project is really what it's all about. What I wanted to try and show you today is a repeatable process that you would get the same results, the same glossy finish, no crawling, no bubbles, no pulling of the enamels, as well as just being able to see these vibrant colors in glass, and being able now to use this piece as part of another piece. So I hope that what you've seen here in this video will encourage you to play more with enamels, and perhaps add Rogue to your list of things to try. I am always testing and playing with these enamels, and I'm constantly amazed at the output and the results that they're able to provide to you. There was one, so the Rogue Color Spectrum, and these are all fired to basically a contour fuse on these pieces, and as you can see, there's a lot of vibrant colors. These colors all intermix with each other and produce different shades, different varieties of colors, purples. Pretty much it's a wide spectrum of colors, and really it's only going to be limited by how you play with them and how you experiment with them. So that's it for now. I'm just gonna turn this up. I was out today, so trying to ignore the kiln cooling down and waiting for it to fires so that I'd be able to show you and get this video out to you. But I hope you've, and I really shouldn't be fixing this, but there you go. I'm not a professional video person, and really this was just all about getting something out to you to let you play and have some fun with enamels. And best of luck. I hope to see your posts and things that you're doing in the future. Just a little plug, my next video for Rogue will be doing something with modeling glass. So another great product that I'm actually I'm in love with. I'm always finding something interesting to do with modeling glass, and combining modeling glass with the Rogue enamels was a natural fit. And I think my next little video for you guys will be showing you how to mix pardon me, modeling glass with Rogue enamels to produce new and interesting colors in your compositions using this tool. Anyway, take care. Have a great day. I'm going to enjoy a glass of wine now and wish you all the best.